Pedro in Ireland, who is certain that he has enough evidence to demonstrate that God exists. So how you doing, Pedro?
Oh, good.
Hello, how good. Thank you for having me.
What do you got evidence-wise?
Right, so let's approach this carefully now. I've met your show like a couple of weeks ago. I haven't seen many of the videos. I've listened to the last 3 or 4 calls now. So I'm not sure if what I'm going to say has been discussed before, but it seems...
Well, I've been doing this for 17 and a half years, and I'm willing to bet every dollar in my wallet that I've addressed it at least 10 times. But go, because it might be new.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like every time I discuss this subject, I feel that we are putting terms in wrong places, because the matter for me is that God is more like an evidence in the Latin sense, which is it's something that's undeniable. So it's a problem itself, then something that you believe in or not. So my problem is, how can I deny God? And then you come with the opposite, which is like, how can I even start believing this? So the first question for us, just to start, is what's the definition of God for you then?
It doesn't matter, and I promise I'm trying to avoid it. There's a normative classical definition of God, which is that there's a thinking agent that is responsible for creating everything, and then there's discussions about how powerful it is or how good it is or anything else. None of that matters, because what matters is, what God are you talking about? Because you might have a different God. For example, the person who called in earlier had a God that they thought was gratitude and all these other things. So you define the God that you believe in, and then we can tell you whether or not we're convinced that that God exists. But I can tell you that all the normative gods, all the ones that are identified as a foundation for Christianity or anything like that, I don't believe that any of those exist. So what's your definition of God?
So that's the thing. I don't believe in the literal religious God, but I'd say every religion, they vent out, and the only possible definition of God, which if you go into, you mentioned epistemology, and if you go into the origins of epistemology, you have ontology, back with the Greeks, and even other religions before that, they vent out this thing, which is God as the necessary unity. So for me, God is the ultimate concept. It is the necessary simplicity and the necessary whole of everything. And then from this very simple principle, which is also the first principle of logic, which is the principle of identity, which is everything is. So the being, just being itself, which is common for every single thing in the universe, which is be. From this point of simplicity, we can then make different assertions. If it's intelligent, if it's good, if you have to be grateful, if it creates the world, all of these things unfold from this principle. And then
I'm confused though, Pedro.
It gets complicated. Go on, sorry.
I'm confused though, because you're defining a God, and you're starting with definitions that are like, God is the necessary unity. Well, I don't know that there is a necessary unity. God is the necessary simplicity. I don't know that there is a necessary simplicity, but the following from that is that you also claim that God is undeniable. Is your God a thinking being?
That's complicated. I wouldn't jump in there before making the first definition.
Okay, I can tell you this, Pedro, and I don't mean this to be rude. I have zero interest. I have zero interest in people who have defined gods as abstractions. You may believe in a God. It's like the person earlier who said that their God was gratitude and stuff. Okay, cool story, bro. Fire up a bong. Because when you say that you don't know whether or not the God you believe in is a thinking agent or not, you are now in a category that you're not Christian, Catholic, Protestant. You are not Hindu. You don't qualify as any of these things, and it's fine. You may be right about what there is. I just don't know what the justification for saying that something that you don't even know if it's a thinking agent qualifies as a God, because that's outside the classical definitions. I appreciate the fact that it's still yours. I have no way of saying that your God doesn't exist.
Parmenides. It's Parmenides' definition from Greece, which is the ontology, which is the foundation of
No.
logic.
I'm sorry, Pedro, but definitions are not ontology. Ontology gets to what something is. Definitions are how we describe it. So it doesn't matter. You can go back to ancient Greek definitions of God or whatever else. That's irrelevant. That is trying to be descriptive. Prescriptive with language to say that, oh, God must mean this. No, God can mean any number of things. And if you have a God that is just an abstract concept, cool, I have no interest in it. But if you have a God that you think is a being with desires, I have an interest in that.
So that's the thing. It is a being, but that's the point. When we say being, for example, let's take science for example, so we can have concrete evidence. If you see a cat, and then you see the specimen in front of you, and you decide, well, it's a feline, so it has a certain species, and it belongs to a certain genus. And then you have this biological categorization, which is taxonomy, which is, each animal belongs to a species, then belongs to a category, then belongs to a family, to a kingdom, to a domain. And then there is groups that go enlarging it, and different sets of beings go in different categories, but then you have categories above of them that encompasses all of them.
I'm going to rein you back in, Pedro, because I find this to be a completely irrelevant distraction. I asked you if the God was a thinking agent, and you said that's complicated, but then you asserted that the God was a being. How could you have a being that is not a thinking agent? I understand that there could be being, like existence, but how could you have a being that isn't a thinking agent?
Well, so that's the perfect answer for me as well, because
that's not a perfect answer. That's the question. The question is never the perfect answer.
No, I understand. Just I would tap into this question to show that for me, God is in fact intelligent, because me as a being of intelligence.
Then why? No. Then why did, when I asked if your God was intelligent, did you duck?
Because I don't want you to see this from a mundane perspective of different gods and different perspectives of gods, when we have to start with the necessary simplicity, which is something is, and this is the unity of everything. So that
okay. So I don't know what the unity of everything is. Andrew, do you want to?
I mean, this sounds like this is. I was trying to think of Daniel Dennett's word for it, and this is just deepity after deepity is what it is. I mean, it's the fact that we exist, I think, is what Pedro is trying to boil God down to. The other thing that keeps running through my head is Tim Minchin's 9-minute beat poem, Storm. Yeah. Anyway, Pedro, I am less than convinced about anything you are saying or the coherence of what you are attempting to say.
I really like, before we end this or get all the distractions, I'd like to see if maybe we can get one single point of clarity between us. What do you mean, Pedro, by necessary unity? Let's just start with that. I was going to say necessary unity or simplicity, but what do you mean by necessary unity?
Right. So that's the thing. If you see any object in the world, they are different in absolute. They are absolutely different from each other. So there's not in the entire universe a single object that's equal to another. So there's a multiplicity, and we live in the multiplicity. So that's science, and we use logic to move through this multiplicity. That's fine, correct?
Well, I don't necessarily know that. Yes, we can use logical reasoning to move through that multiplicity. Just like I have a dollar and another dollar. One could argue that there's a context in which they're the same, but they are definitely different and distinct, and we can reason about them. Yes. What does that have to do with necessary unity?
Because when we say the $2 bills are the same, we are equiparating them in a category, which is money. And then we can say also that dollars and euros are also money. And then you can say there is different categories that goes into encompassing more and more different.
I don't understand what this has to do with necessary unity. I have two $1 bills in my wallet. There is a context in which it would be fair to say that they are the same, provided we define same as equal in value. But to say that they are the same with regard to logical identity is never true. Never, ever, 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 ever true. They are two distinct things. That's what the law of identity is. How does that relate to necessary unity?
Because at the same time, they are different and is perfectly not comparable in any way possible. At the same time,
No. As soon as you say they're not comparable in any way possible, you're just wrong. You can compare anything to anything in some fashion. What I'm saying is, yes, we have two $1 bills. They are distinct from the standpoint of logical identity. What does this have to do for the last time with necessary unity?
Because you have the structure of reality, which is multiplicity in one side and the unity on the other. But this distinction is just for us to understand.
What is unity that you're I'm not trying to be difficult, Pedro, but we're wasting a bunch of time here. For the final time, define necessary unity.
Is the unity of being, everything.
That is a nonsense statement that you can't define something by saying necessary unity is the unity of being. That doesn't edify anyone. It doesn't explain anything. It is absolutely a waste of words.
If you go into geometry, the point, how do you define the point? It has no dimension, it has no time, it has no space, it's just the point.
Pedro, what the hell does that have to do with, are you going to define, I tell you what, this is the absolute last chance. I want you to define necessary unity. Please explain the concept in a sentence or two in such a way that everybody here will understand what the hell you're talking about. That's it. That's all I can do.
It's just because I'm speaking about something that it's Greek philosophy, to be honest. So it's a subject that's known in certain circles. But I found when you talk with atheists,
okay, goodbye, Pedro. I gave you 15 chances, and instead of actually defining it, you decided to do some meta thing explaining why you can't define it. Please think about it. Call back another time.